Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Hello and welcome to the latest episode. It's Friday, the 3rd of July, 2026. Congratulations to us for making it through the week. Now, I am jumping straight in with tonight's episode. This is actually the one I planned for the episode number 150. This is 153, and I wanted to celebrate episode 150 because, believe me, when I started, I had absolutely no idea I would even get this far. And then I completely forgot, just talked about something else entirely. And then I remembered I was supposed to be doing this. And this one is kind of like a Q&A, but it's a totally anonymous Q&A because over the last 18 months since I started the podcast, I've had lots and lots of questions and comments and messages from listeners, and maybe even you've sent one in. And I do love hearing from you, so do please carry on sending them in. But, you know, the most insightful thing that I've got from messages is not really the question itself. It's kind of the throwaway comments that get added into the messages, perhaps even the last thing that is said. Things like, I don't think I could do it, or I'm only really small scale, or I'd like to grow, but I don't know where to start, or even I'm not knowledgeable enough. And so I've kind of looked at all of those sort of comments as well as the questions. So I thought I'm just going to answer some questions indirectly and not attribute them to anybody in particular. So let's start with the first one. Can I actually make any money growing cut flowers? Well, the pros will tell you that you definitely can. And there are lots of people out there who offer books and courses and all kinds of materials who will say that you can. I can tell you that I made some money last year when I was doing my first year, and I'm making money so far in year 2. Now, it's not enough to retire on, and at the moment it's not even enough to quit doing all the other silly things that I have to do to pay the bills. I will give you an indication when we get to the end of the year when I've crunched all the numbers, because one of the most important things to remember is that sales and revenue is not the same as profit. So just because you sell something for 20, 30, 50 pounds, it doesn't mean that you get that money into your pocket. I mean, you do sort of, but you may well have spent an absolute fortune getting to that point. And this is one of the reasons why I talk so much about crunching the numbers, collecting data, trying to work out cost of production all of the time. Because if you want to have a business that sustains you, that you can actually live off, which is my goal, I very much want to just do this and not have to do anything for anybody else. Then I am trying to work out all of the time how I can make it profitable, how it can pay me an income. And it is, you know, it boggles my brain sometimes, all of the numbers that I go through. But I simply don't understand how I could have an idea of whether this business is going to make enough money to support me or not without all of that data. It's also so important to think about productivity and, you know, all aspects of productivity. So that's how you do your sowing, how you do your bed prep, how you harvest, how you sell, how you do all of your everything basically to do with producing the stems. That apparently is more important than having an enormous field to work on. So when I first started, I was thinking, oh, I need more land, and I still have that thought sometimes. But I think if I didn't have the basics right and I didn't know what I was doing, to suddenly have 1 acre, 5 acres, 10 acres, I think I would probably implode, because I just don't think, unless you've got lots and lots of resources behind you, maybe you own your own land, or you've got access to equipment and machinery and people that can use them, and you can use those resources without necessarily having to pay out for a contractor, then I don't see, unless you had an absolute ton of money, how you could possibly do it on a scale right at the beginning. So it's perfectly okay to start small. And that's one of the questions actually that I'm going to talk about in a second. So I am going to hedge my bets here and say it is possible to make money doing this. The question is, to what extent and how much profit can you make? How much can I make? How much can I afford to pay myself? And what do the numbers look like at the end of the year? I know that doesn't sound overwhelmingly positive, but I'm just not going to lie to you and say, oh, yes, absolutely, you've got to start because it's such a money spinner. Because it really, really isn't. It's incredibly hard work. And, it's late. I'm tired. I've had a long week and the heat is, ever present. There are water pressures. There are all sorts of pressures. It is incredibly hard work, and it is nothing like some of the Instagram fantasy stuff where people are just swanning around in linen dresses with flowers over their shoulders. Like, I can assure you, it's absolutely not like that at all. Now, the second question is, what sort of flowers could I start with if I'm inexperienced and not wildly confident about it? There isn't a simple answer to this one, except to say it really depends where you're planning on selling them. So, as you know, because I keep yakking on about it, I decided to sell wholesale to wedding and event florists. I don't remember when exactly I made that decision, but that's the one I made. And therefore, I choose plants that are more in sort of weddingy styles or weddingy colors. Although, my wedding and event florist, she does other things. Predominantly, she is a wedding florist. That is like the meat and bones of her business. So you do need to have a think about exactly where you're going to sell your flowers. And if you were going to sell them outside your house or in like a shed or something that you've got at the end of the road, or a farm stand or something like that, you're probably going to want different flowers to those that are going to go to a wedding. So weddings often have lots of roses, they have lisianthus, they have lots of snaps, they have hydrangeas, they have stuff that is like quite showpiece kind of stuff. And it is, beyond me why I thought I would be good enough to start off doing that. But, I like a challenge. And you also need to think about how much space you've got and exactly how many stems you're going to be producing and how you're going to do them. Like, if you don't have a greenhouse, I always say you don't have to have a greenhouse. You can start stuff perfectly well without a greenhouse. You just have to know that you're probably going to be starting things a bit later than everyone else. Again, not a problem. I'm always late for everything anyway, and it always works out fine. But you're just going to have to do things differently. Now, I think there are certain flowers that everybody could start with that are absolutely bomb-proof. Things like Achillea, which I have talked about quite a bit because I love it. I've got it on my field. It's amazing. Things like Echinacea, which is absolutely bomb-proof. Phlox, Scabious. I mean, lots of these are, well, with the exception of Scabious, a lot of these are perennials. Now, the thing about that is that you're going to need some cash up front in order to buy these perennials. Unless you've got lots in your garden that you could divide, you're going to need to get them from somewhere. Yes, you could sow them from seed, and that's a great way of doing it. And I like to try and do some every year. But they don't all flower in the first year, as I found out with my Cephalaria last year. And so you need to be thinking kind of like, if you're going to start sowing, you need to be thinking, well, might not flower till year 2, won't be really, really good until year 3. That's quite a long way down the track. So if you can afford a kind of a balance between annuals and perennials, then I would definitely try and get that balance. But if you're going to start off with an absolute shoestring budget, which I did, I bought mine from Little Supermarket in, was it last year or the year before? I'm so out of, I have no idea what year it is, honestly. but I bought mine from a budget supermarket and they were absolutely amazing. So it's perfectly possible to just start with really basic seeds from the supermarket and get cracking. Now, um, back to the sort of how much land do I need question. This is a really good one, and you will have moments like I do when you think, oh, I definitely need more land, like this is nowhere near enough. And there are times when you look out on a sea of weeds and living paths that are 2 foot tall, and all the things, all the jobs that you never got round to on sort of half an acre, and you think, oh my goodness, there's absolutely no way I could cope with more land. And I think it would be very challenging. Now, unless you got a field that was, lovely and flat, and it's, you can get someone to come and cultivate it for you if that's what you want, and you've got the money to put up some stock fencing or, deer fencing or whatever, and you can have compost shipped in which case you could probably start with something a little bit bigger than half an acre and or even a quarter acre, and hit the ground running. But there are so many things to manage when you first start out that if you're not careful, if you don't know what's coming down the track, you can find that you've actually got quite a lot of land to take care of. And with that comes all the additional pest pressures, needing more equipment to just physically deal with everything. And you obviously need a much bigger market as well if you're going to start growing on a larger scale. One thing that people often say is, where should I sell my flowers? Like, is it okay just to sell them at the end of my road? And I think absolutely go for it. Sell them absolutely anywhere you can sell them. There is plenty of demand for locally grown flowers, especially if you're doing them chemical free or pesticide free, and you build a kind of you build your value into your offering so people really understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. I didn't want to sell outside my field for a number of reasons, not least because of the privacy and the security issue, and I don't want to draw any traffic there. I wouldn't have done even before my ducks got stolen, but I certainly wouldn't afterwards. And it's not a road that has any traffic on it whatsoever, so there is no passing trade. It's off a dual carriageway, actually, so the traffic that is coming down the road is going 60, 70, sometimes 80 miles an hour if the boy races this evening were anything to go by. And they are unlikely to, well, I couldn't even put any signage up because it's just not even possible. So it's not even feasible. And I don't want people just dropping in. But if that's your thing, then I think absolutely go for it. And I see some kind of display units that people make, like an upgraded, pimped up shed, if you like. And they are so beautiful. I absolutely love them. I would love to buy flowers from them. The concept is amazing. It's just not for me. And I've gone down the whole wholesale to florists route, and I love the fact that they turn up in their vans with their buckets and just pick up everything from me. So I have said that I'll deliver if they need me to, but so far nobody's taken me up on it. And it's really quick and easy. They just turn up. They're really fast. They turn up, have a wander around the field, and then they go, and that's it, job done. And I invoice them. So I don't have to worry about, collecting cash or security or anything like that. It's all very, very highly organized. I, as you know, did consider going to a local market and selling my bouquets there. I say my bouquets, I'm still practicing with the whole bouquets and I'm getting there, but I've got to say I haven't done it for ages. And I had a glut of stems the other day and I thought, oh, I'll whip up a bouquet. And I was so rusty because I hadn't really done it much since last year, and I made an absolute fist of it. I really did. So I've sort of parked that and thought, no, I think it's one of those things that you just need to practice more often and do it when you're in a good frame of mind and feeling positive, and not with like loads of other jobs to do, because then the pressure is just too much and I just completely messed it up. So it very, very much depends what you feel like in your gut, what you feel like where you want to sell to. And I decided that the local markets was really not going to be for me. I costed it all out, and I just couldn't see that there being enough money in it, quite honestly, once all the things were considered. So I get a number of themes on these sort of questions or throwaway comments is a lack of knowledge, like not enough experience or not enough growing knowledge. And that's a bit of a tricky one in a sense, because I think it's more of a confidence issue than a skill set, because I'm here to tell you that, seeds really just want to germinate. Unless you stuff it up enormously, you really can just toss stuff in a tray with some compost from a local supermarket, and odds on they'll germinate. Now, I'm not saying you're going to have the best flowers in the whole world and you're going to be sold out and people are going to be, beating your door down to get to them. But that's the best way to learn, is to actually do it. I've been sowing stuff for, I don't know, for decades. It feels like forever. And I am still refining my technique and learning how to do things and trying to work things out differently and be better at what I do. So it's, you kind of just need to get started and not worry too much about certainly not being qualified. I have had a couple of questions about, qualifications and yes, I did an RHS course, but that was all to do with gardening. It's nothing to do with growing cut flowers. And I had a lot of issues with the RHS course because the techniques they taught us were literally from the dark ages. I mean, double digging and all this kind of stuff and all the chemicals and blah, blah, blah. It was just, I don't agree with a lot of what they do. The best experience, in my opinion, is practical. And shadowing other people is also really great. So I definitely think just having a go and getting as much practice as you can, and even doing, part-time work in garden centres, places like that, plant nurseries, super, super useful. Might not all be about flowers all of the time, but you'll learn so much plant knowledge because you'll get asked the same questions over and over again. And people will bring back, dead plants that says full sun on the label, and you say to them, where have you planted it? And they're like, oh, under a yew tree. And it's like, okay, well, that could well be why it's now dead. And there's nothing like learning really quickly when you have to answer questions from members of the public as well. I guess you could also contact some of your local flower farmers and see if they want any help. Probably not a good idea to try and tell them what your hourly rate is, excuse me, and ask them to employ you and pay you what you feel you would be due, because that's highly unlikely to happen, because we're all trying to keep our costs of production as low as possible. But it's still worth asking. I mean, I guess there are peak periods when I would have to get some help in. I mean, not very often, it has to be said, but sometimes I do need a little bit of help. And I've got somebody that I know who comes and does some bits for me. But there would be other growers out there, particularly the larger ones, who will certainly need pickers in the peak periods of the year. And it could well be that going to work for them would be really good experience. You will certainly learn that being on the field at 5 a.m. and getting paid the minimum wage is a fairly realistic situation for what it's like when you're doing it for yourself. Admittedly, you can pay yourself more than that if you want to, but you will still be outside in the crack of dawn doing stuff. And you won't be there for the 11 o'clock at night watering with a head torch that I do sometimes, because they won't have you on the field in the dark. But there's lots of different ways of picking up experience that is nothing to do with qualifications or expensive courses. And I think I talked about expensive courses when I very first started the podcast. I did an episode called What You Really Do and Don't Need. And I think I said in there, you don't need to go on a course. Now, having said that, I'm someone that went on a course in December, but I went on this course very specifically because it was a business-focused flower farming course. It was not how to sow things, how to harvest things. It was absolutely nothing to do with growing cut flowers whatsoever. It was how to run a business of a cut flower business. And that to me was the distinction. So I reckon you could just teach yourself how to do most of the growing things. Yes, there's an awful lot to it, and I'm not saying that you could just pick it up and run with it because it's so easy, anyone could do it. I'm not saying that at all. But just to get started, then definitely you don't need to be going on any expensive courses. Oh, well, the pricing is the huge one. I mean, I keep saying, oh, I'm going to do a whole episode on this, and I probably will. In fact, I probably have done. I have struggled with pricing for years. I haven't struggled with it so much this year because I've got so many other things that are on my mind. I've just sort of thought I'm not wasting a second worrying about this. I put all my prices up this year for everything. So far, I haven't had any pushback, which possibly means they need to go up even more. I'm not sure. But I've definitely had a better sense of what I'm doing this year and the value and the service that I'm providing. And therefore, I felt like I could back any increase in price. I'm also understanding a bit more now about the cost of production for all of the stems. So I know exactly, well, I say exactly, I know roughly where I should be pricing everything. And it's really then just a question of refining this as the years go on. So pricing is a difficult one. There is absolutely no doubt about it. But what I will say to you is we absolutely cannot copy what the supermarkets do because we know that flowers are a loss leader for them. We can't benchmark against the imports because they are producing on a scale and with, I'm not going to say slave labor, but I know people don't get very good wages and they don't have very good working conditions, particularly the women. So we can't benchmark against those either. We also can't drop down to the level that growers who are doing it like as I don't want to say hobby because that sounds really mean, and I don't mean that, who are not doing it as a serious business, which is fine because you don't have to do it as a serious business. Just because I am beating my head against a brick wall trying to do it as a business does not mean that needs to be the model for everybody. If I, wanted to do things differently, I could, but that's just the route I've gone down, and I want to make it pay. I want it to employ me, and I want to be able to live nicely off it. So if people are just growing things and selling them just to have a little bit of pocket money, absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's a market for everything. And like I say, you don't have to turn everything you do into some kind of business. I've got a really bad habit of doing that. So definitely don't do what I'm doing. But there is a sort of almost this idea that you can't do anything these days without trying to commodify it or commercialize it or try and make money off it. Like when I was younger, we used to you just had hobbies. You didn't have to have a Vinted account, or you didn't have to have Canva, or you didn't have to do all of this stuff in order to just make money out of what was effectively your hobby. So if you want to grow cut flowers as a hobby, that's absolutely fine. Like, you go for it. There's a place for all of us. But if you're growing them for a business and you're selling them in the vicinity of someone who is selling them as a hobby, don't benchmark your prices against theirs. Let the people that want to buy their flowers go ahead and do it, and you focus on your target audience. And you've also got to make sure when you factor in your pricing that you work out your labor costs. And you've got to do this. You have to know how much time you spend doing all these things, what your hourly rate is or what you'd like it to be. And then you've got to price it in. And that will help to show you what your actual pricing should be. Briefly coming back to the question about what should I grow if I'm new, what I would say to you, and this is based on experience here, is to just not grow too many different things. So if you listen regularly, you'll know I did my crop plan over the winter, and then I was very strict. I think I was going to have about 10 different things, and 10 different annuals rather. And then it sort of crept up to 15. And then I bought some last minute crazy things and it cropped up to about 17 or 19. That is ridiculous. And some of the things that I bought are just not worth it, and they've been a bit of a distraction. And now I look at them and think every minute I spent on you was a minute that I couldn't have spent somewhere else. And given that there aren't enough minutes in the day or the week, every minute is going to start adding up. And everything that isn't totally focused and aligned with what you want to achieve is just a distraction from that. And there is a reason why all the pro growers say don't grow too many different varieties, because you just won't be able to keep a handle on them, especially if you are new. If you've got 17 daft things like I do, all having different staking requirements, all having different sowing conditions, different harvesting procedures, different conditioning procedures. Some of them like the sun or the shade, or they fall over, or they're sensitive to light. So they're going to be, it's just too much to take on board. I wrote all of those notes in my massive spreadsheet. Have I looked at them once? No, I haven't, because I don't have time, because I'm busy rushing around trying to keep the ones that I've got in the ground just going upright. So whatever you do, just grow, I don't know, between 5 and 10 things so well that everybody that you sell them to is like, you have the best flowers, rather than turning up with 17 or 18 things, half of which you've completely lost control over, and they're not the very best they can be, because your reputation will be made on the quality of your stems. So definitely don't grow too many things. And this kind of leads on to the final question. I have had this question: what's the biggest mistake that you've made, or that beginning people make? And there's actually a couple of answers to this. In fact, I could probably talk for another half an hour on this, but I've got to wind it up. The couple of the really biggest mistakes: one is growing too many varieties, like I've just talked about. The other is thinking that everything is going to happen in the first or the second year, thinking that you can just take your knowledge, apply it, and the result will be beautiful stems grown to exactly your target customer and lots of money rolling in. I'm quite sure I'm going to get there 1 year, but I'm here to tell you it's not looking like it's going to be year 2 either. So it's being realistic about what you can expect. I mean, be positive, be optimistic. I'm not saying you're never going to make it and therefore, be prepared to be disappointed. It's not that at all. It's a very steep learning curve. And there are all these things that happen during the course of the year that you think, oh, well, I'll do that differently next year. I'll do it better next year. Next year comes, you might have done everything absolutely perfectly, taken all of your suggestions on board, and then you could have a month of rain. Or you could have, like we had, 2 heat waves a couple of weeks apart. Mother Nature will always, have a sting in the tail, and stuff just happens. Like it's hard to convey from so low down in the trenches as I am at the moment, just how many things can happen to knock off your plans, to just stuff just happens. And then there's also life as well to consider. Unless you want to completely lose yourself in the cut flowers, you have to be able to segment it and keep it as your business or your hobby or whatever it is, and it doesn't impact in your life in such a way that it just completely takes over, which I have to be very, very careful with. So don't grow too many things, and don't think that everything is just going to work perfectly at the end of the first or the second year, because it's a long learning curve, and that is kind of part of the fun. I love the idea that it's one of these sort of unreachable goals in a way, but not in a bad way. It's like you're constantly I am constantly striving to do things better, more efficiently, to kind of crack this, that, and the other. It's not like you're going to open a coffee shop and everything's going to be perfect on day one, and nothing changes by after month 6 or 1 year or whatever, because you've got everything cracked on day one. Growing cut flowers is not like that, and you'll change as a person as you do it, and it will be the most wonderful journey you ever go on. Like, I wouldn't swap it for anything, but you don't crack it after the first or second year, and I'll let you know if I ever crack it, but I don't think I will. But that is part of the joy of doing it. Now, the plant profile of the week is back, and this week, in honor of the fact that I have sold absolutely loads of these this week, I'm talking to you about cornflowers. The Latin name for these is Centaurea cyanus, and they are native to Europe and Western Asia. And I have grown them for 3 years now, and every year I say to myself, never, ever again. But here I am, year 3, growing them again. Now, I got into a right mess with them in 2025. I did a couple of things wrong. I grew one enormous batch because I wasn't into succession and batch sowing back last year. I just did an absolute whumping great load all at once. And then they were obviously all flowered all at the same time. And it was absolute craziness. And I didn't sell very many of them last year because I was so new and I hadn't really got any of these relationships going. And I spent, I think, most of 2025 just deadheading them in the hope that I would sell them. And I did sell some, but nowhere near enough to cover the cost of me just deadheading them constantly. And I also made the mistake of staking them with string. I don't know quite what I was thinking. Instead of just going to buy netting, I just decided to create this kind of crazy structure with string. It was absolute madness. I remember being really proud of it at the time, took lots of photos, and now I just think, what on earth was I doing? And they obviously grew very, very tall, and then they all just fell over. Excuse me. And because they weren't properly supported, they took all of them sort of with each other. And cornflowers are one of those flowers where when they kind of lean over, they will readjust the direction of the stem, so they all were then facing the wrong way, or they just had stems coming out sideways from the main stem. It was just horrible, 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 awful disaster. This year is very, very much different. This year, I actually ended up with tons and tons of self-seeded ones from last year's disaster. So clearly I didn't win the battle with the deadheading because they all dropped their seed. The seed germinated in completely random places on the field. So they have just popped up wherever they felt like it, which has been quite inconvenient. And I haven't wanted to move them because I knew that they were going to be amazing. The stuff that self-seeds, honestly, it's so brilliant. The plants are huge. They're adapted to the environment, to the soil, to absolutely everything. So they're just off. They're amazing. But they have all been in really, really daft places. And then I've done succession sowings. So I think I've done one lot per week for about 6 weeks or something. So they're all out on the field, just coming along in stages, which is really nice. And what I've been able to do is cut the ones that self-seeded from last year. And the great thing about that is zero cost of production. So we're absolutely loving that. Now, talking of loving it, florists love them. The blue for the blue cornflower is a proper blue. It's very hard colour to find, and it's absolutely drop dead gorgeous. I have one blue plant that's self-seeded, and it is lovely. The white is predominantly what I have, and it is gorgeous for weddings. They're just really, really beautiful. Again, it's one of those things, the closer you look at them, the more beautiful they are. They also come in lots of other colours. I've been growing black ones as well. Very, very nice. They've just got this lovely fluffy, super fluffy flower head, and then there's just a lot going on with them because there's always new seed heads following along. And so not only does it mean you get flowers like constantly, they just flower their socks off all summer. It's not just one flower on a stem. You get to look at all these buds as well at all different sizes, and they go very well with other flowers. Now, I love growing them because they are super easy to grow from seed. They're one of those ones where you just chuck a whole packet in and you get a whole packet out of the tray. They are really amazing. They're not fussy. They don't need anything fancy. The seed is pretty cheap. They just keep flowering, and they are low maintenance in terms of care. Now, they do need staking. Well, certainly mine needed staking. Could be mine got too big, or they couldn't cope with the slope and they all just tipped over. I don't know what it was, but mine are staked this year, so we're not having any of that silly falling over business again. And obviously cut and come again, so you're getting more sellable stems per square meter. which is what we want. They do like full sun, and they like a free draining soil. They will not thank you if you put them somewhere swampy. The trick again is to sow them in autumn for early summer stems, then sow them again in spring for later flowers that year. Pinching. I have never pinched mine out. I'd love to know if you pinch yours out. I have never done it, and I seem to get masses of stems, and I don't know that I would be able to cope if I pinch them and then you've got even more stems on a plant, because I just think, oh my goodness, I just have to shift them really quickly. And harvesting, the right time to do this, again, comes back to what you're going to be selling them for. You are apparently supposed to cut them when they've kind of, they've coloured up and it's sort of just after the bud crack stage, I believe is right, but don't quote me on that one, I might be wrong. But if I did that to my wedding event florist, they wouldn't be open in time for the event 2 days after she picked up from me. So I have my stuff ready much more open, like not gone over, but just very much more open. So it's literally hitting it. Well, it's hit its stride basically on the day of the event. Fine to have extra little buds appearing, but I couldn't sell anything in a closed bud state because it wouldn't be ready for the event. So again, it very much depends on what you want to do with them. So that's everything that I wanted to talk to you about tonight, and have gone on a little bit there. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I very much hope that you'll come back and join me for the next episode. I look forward to filling you in on what I've been up to. So in the meantime, again, have a great weekend. Come back and join me next time, and all the very best to you.